Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Pac-Man here, and once again, I am back for the likes of the Mexi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Pac-Man World 2, specifically for the Game Boy Advance. So, last time, we somehow managed able to went into 4 stages so far, in terms of the forms of this particular version of the game, which not only did we somehow manage able to traverse into Pac Village, but in addition to bare basics, and in addition to that though, treetops, as well as the first boss in the game, that we did somehow manage able to take on Iggy with his Blade-O-Matic. So as a result, and in addition to that, we also did claim ourselves the first of the 3 golden fruits in terms of the forms of this version of the game, because like I said before, unlike the console version, there was like 5 golden fruits to obtain in order to be able to actually stop the evil clutches of Spooky, but that's besides the point. So today for this video is that we are about to be diving into the majority of the ice world, basically, much like the console version, except the fact that you might be able to actually realize about this is that one of those levels in particular that is actually pretty cool in a console version, where you can be able to actually ice skating downwards into the forms of Blade Mountain. Well, that's not the case this time around on the handheld version of the game, because as you can definitely tell, that obviously that was about the fact that we still have to rely on the forms of ice physics here and there. So generally speaking, that was about the fact that, again, this is where the game starts to get a little bit more difficult at this point, especially with that particular... You know, the depth perception is going to be your biggest enemy in this particular version of the game, much like Pac-Man World 1 for the Game Boy Advance, so I digress. So, unfortunately though, for those of you probably wondering about the fact that yes, sadly though, we've come across into technical issues right off the bat, because as a matter of fact though, we've come across into sound issues on our commentary. Well, not so much for commentary, but it's more accurately though the game audio, which means about the fact that it's all staticky and all that stuff, so I might able to actually try to fix that up during at some point until tomorrow, because as a matter of fact, I was about the fact I just want to get this game done and over with before, you know, when Mexi decides able to finally conclude everything in terms of the forms of Paper Mario by next week. So generally speaking, that's what I can really think about this for the sake of time. So anyway, yeah, as you can tell for the fact that we've met again with these ice physics here and there. However, unlike the console version, if you couldn't tell, every time whenever you do manage to butt bounce in one of those ice platforms, as you can tell, we are no longer trying to able to be a little bit more restricted in regards to the forms that are able to get stunned by the forms of that particular ice slippery physics. So, no matter what though, we should be fine for now, as long as about the fact that, like I said before, the depth perception is going to be your biggest enemy in this game, just because you can't really judge the distance of it. So, but I digress. So, and as far as I'm aware, those ghost-like enemies are no longer trying to able to actually charge straight into you, unlike the forms of how it does on the console version. So they managed to able to like go in stationary position, which I felt was a little bit odd, considering for the fact that you can still able to try to defeat them by trying to able to rolling into them, and also trying to able to butt bounce onto them at the same time. So logically though, it's about the fact that trying to deal with these ghost-like enemies remains the same as the console version, so that's besides the point. So, anyways though, so yeah, a few things I want to talk about this is though, and that's what it appears to be for the fact that, well, today's date of course there is the 19th of June today, in some cases in 2025 today, and oh my goodness gracious me, yesterday's Nintendo Direct focuses on Donkey Kong Bonanza is not only incredibly exciting, but it's also about the fact that it does have some tons of surprises here and there. Like, first of all, Pauline is going to be revealed in Donkey Kong Bonanza, but as in a younger counterpart of herself, which I'm like, okay, that's going to be pretty interesting at the same time, especially considering for the fact that after all though, that we've only just got about a couple of weeks left now until the actual game is going to be releasing on Nintendo Switch 2, but that doesn't stop there, because as far as I'm aware, there are some bunch of new stuff has been revealed for Donkey Kong Bonanza, like for instance though, much like the forms of how it does it on Super Mario Odyssey, that we might able to actually stumble across into ourselves the co-op feature, which as a result though, one player can able to actually take control of the forms of Donkey Kong, of course, and then the other player can able to take control of Pauline, which all you can really do is that you can able to actually use the mouse controls to able to actually shout out these very weird vocal projectile things as letters, and you can able to actually just not only break boundaries, but also defeating enemies as well. Which, kind of thing about it though, it feels remarkably similar to the forms of how it does it in Mario Odyssey, where one player can able to take control as Mario, but then the other player can able to take control of the forms of Cappy. So as a result though, yeah, it's remarkably similar for that regard. Although, as far as I'm aware though, is about the fact that, speaking of which, the Amiibo figurine has also been revealed as well. And no matter what though, it's going to be featuring not only Donkey Kong, but Pauline as well. So no matter what though, is about the fact that I believe what that particular Amiibo functionality can do is that if you try to scan in Donkey Kong and Pauline Amiibo figurines specifically though, you're able to actually get yourselves an exclusive dress specifically for Pauline. Because yes, the reason why I say dress is because, similar to the forms of how it does it in Super Mario Odyssey, you can able to actually change your outfits for not only for Donkey Kong, but as well as Pauline as well. So it's like a combination of both Super Mario Odyssey and Princess Peach Showtime at the same time in regards to the forms of customization options, which is pretty interesting all things considered. So because of that though, and generally speaking, I was about the fact I also did somehow realize that yes, just like the forms of how it does it in Super Mario Odyssey, alongside with the forms of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate up to this point, obviously that was about the fact that we might able to actually hear the fully vocaled theme songs here and there, which is all thanks to the forms of Pauline herself, which as a result, yeah, it's pretty awesome all things considered, because I get the strong sense of feeling for the fact that when it comes to later Nintendo games in the future, that we're about to be able to actually stumble across into ourselves fully voice acting when it comes to some Nintendo games, which is pretty awesome all things considered in my opinion. So, but either way though, chances are though is about the fact that obviously though, like I said before, we've only just got about, let's just say, 28 more days to go until Donkey Kong Bonanza is going to be releasing, alongside with the forms of Donkey Kong and Pauline Amiibo, which I'm very curious to know if I was going to try to get that Amiibo at some point, but time will definitely tell though. I mean, I have to act fast though, you know, in order to able to actually get myself this very nifty Donkey Kong and Pauline Amiibo for the sake of the forms of Donkey Kong Bonanza game. So as a result, yeah, I think that might actually be the only Nintendo game so far they somehow managed able to confirm the Amiibo functionality, not counting the forms of Nintendo Switch 2 editions for some games, like for instance though, with The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, despite the fact that those two games in particular do manage able to also have the Switch 1 releases, but now they're able to actually have even more Amiibos to the table. So yeah, you can get the idea of what I was expecting to mention about that specific points worth noting for. So, but I digress. So as you can tell, we're now on to the next stage right here, which appears to be called Avalanche, which I'm almost assuming for the fact is going to be called Avalanche Alley, just like the forms of how it does on the console version, but apparently though, again, due to the forms of handouts limitations and all that stuff, so they just literally calls it Avalanche basically. So because of that, because during the forms of in a previous level, if you couldn't tell, that we've somehow managed able to experience River Run, which I'm almost assuming is going to be called Ice River Run, much like the console version, but apparently it doesn't. So oh well, no big deal though, especially considering for the fact I get the strong sense of feeling that I believe we're technically onto the halfway point of this particular version of the game already, which, truth be told though, is about the fact that for the majority of some stages, if you couldn't tell, not only does it becomes a lot more lengthier, but it's also about the fact that, like I said before, there's going to be a lot of trial and error situations from time to time where it comes to the forms of depth perception is going to be your biggest enemy throughout. So, but I digress. So I get the feeling for this particular stage right there is that we're about to get chased by the forms of the massive snowball, much like the console version, but you can able to actually ignore that particular snowball if you couldn't tell, by trying to able to actually grab onto a certain ledge if the depth perception might able to actually either work half the time or other times not, due to the forms of the actual I can't really judge the distance that much. So but I digress. So, yeah, let me know in the comments down below for the question of the day. Since that you somehow now recently watched the Donkey Kong Bonanza Direct, do I seriously recommend that Direct? Absolutely, especially because it does manage to bring us something new to the table. Although I will say though is about the fact that that particular Direct to me though is actually a little bit more enjoyable in comparison to the forms of Mario Kart World's Direct because, well, technically speaking it was about the fact that while looking back, since in April, that obviously though we've already know about most of these things in Mario Kart World ever since you know, on that particular Nintendo Direct focuses on Nintendo Switch 2, so it might be seems a little bit overly redundant to able to actually bring up the exact same information over and over again, but with a different format. So yeah, you get the idea what I was expecting to able to actually try to compare between both Mario Kart Worlds, which don't get me wrong, I still really enjoy the game though still, but I just really wish about the fact that I kind of wish there was actually more to it than that. Whereas compared to Donkey Kong Bonanza, man, the hype is going to be insane, especially because of all that. You know, Pauline is now a thing after the events of that particular crazy rumor in the past, which as a result, it eventually became true. So generally speaking, I was about the fact that with the odd rock in mind, it eventually became Pauline, which is pretty interesting all things considered. So because of that though, because what if I first saw it and I'm like, oh my god, Pauline is actually officially real in Donkey Kong Bonanza, which I can totally see why, that Pauline is now going to get a lot more spotlight these days, which is pretty fantastic all things considered, especially after the events of, you know, quite a lot of Mario games in the past, ranging from let's just say Super Mario Odyssey, and in addition to Mario Tennis Aces, and one of those spirits in the forms of in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and in addition to even more playable character debuts for the likes of Mario Golf Super Rush, and in addition to Mario Strikers Battle League Football, and even now with the forms of both Mario Kart Tour, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and even Mario Kart World, and even with Super Mario Party Jamboree as well. So it may look like for the fact that this will be you know, pretty awesome to able to actually see some more spotlight for Pauline in mind, because let me tell you, Pauline is a welcoming addition in regards to the forms of future Mario games to come, especially considering for the fact that obviously that was about the fact that, oh, and also she did make it a cameo appearance from the likes of in the Super Mario Bros. Movie after all, which, that reminds me, I wonder if she'll appear again on the next Mario movie at some point. I mean, time will definitely tell though, specifically until next year, but that's besides the point. So, anyway, and also as far as I'm aware, still no sign of Diddy Kong around here somewhere, which, if I can recall correctly, that it might come until the later dated time, where it comes to more specifically though with the actual free updates kind of scenario, which, again, it's hard for me to judge about the forms of what's to come at this point. I mean, relatively speaking, it was about the fact that, like I said before, we've only got 4 weeks left until the actual game launches, so, for Nintendo Switch 2, and that will be, conveniently enough, will be my third Nintendo Switch 2 game I actually got. So because of that though, and alongside with the forms of the fourth Nintendo Switch 2 game I actually got, well, in terms of pre-orders anyway, which is of course Super Mario Party Jamboree Nintendo Switch 2 edition to try out the forms of, you know, mouse controls and the forms of Nintendo Switch 2 camera support for Jamboree TV mode and all that stuff. So yeah, you get the idea what I was expecting to able to try to mention about that stuff though. So but, yeah, again, I do apologize about the forms of the game's audio. Seems to have a lot of, jittery here and there, or a lot more stuttery here and there. But I'll promise you guys until tomorrow, though, I definitely need to fix that particular sound issue on the actual game audio. Whilst, compared to the actual commentary itself, it's perfectly fine, but it's just about the fact I was a little bit annoyed about the fact that there are some technical issues from time to time. So, now, if you couldn't tell already, we actually got ourselves a Galaxian, believe it or not, which I believe what that does is that I'm pretty sure you're able to actually unlock something in Pac Village, as far as I can recall that. I mean, mind you, I haven't really checked this out for myself, you see. And speaking of checking out certain things, as you can see on screen, I accidentally managed able to go back into the previous stage, like River Run, and as you can tell, much like the defaults of how it does on the console version, we somehow activate the time trial mode, which is self-explanatory, but I might as well show that off for later, just because no matter what though is about the fact that for the time being though, let me go ahead and try to able to actually grind for some extra lives, because I refuse to able to actually get myself my game over But if I do get a game over though, not only for the fact that we have to start all over at the beginning of the game again, but also, like I said before, we have to rely on the password feature. There's also reassuring about this too. If you do manage to activate the password feature, your level progression, as far as percentage-wise, are always going to be 50%. So because of that though, my guess is about the fact you simply complete the stage as normal. And that's all there is to it. In regards to the forms that particular description, about the forms of if you do manage to able to insert the password codes correctly, and then if you do manage to double check on the actual world map, then if you see that particular percentage number, which appears to be, well, 50%, this means about the fact that you somehow ignored every collectibles, although you essentially complete stages, basically. So because of that, though, yeah, there's nothing right to hum about, basically. So, anyway, it was also reassuring about this too. Speaking of which, in regards to the forms of not only Super Mario Party Jamboree, but in addition to Mario Kart World as well. Recently though, both of those games have recently got themselves the actual version update. Which, first of all though, in regards to the forms of Mario Kart World, that game is currently now on version 1.1.1, so 3 1s in a row in terms of the forms of that particular patch update. So because of that though, before I get into more details about this though, as you can see, we now ended up in Blade Mountain, which, yes, unlike the forms of how it does on the console version, that we expected able to actually do some ice skating action, right? Well, it turns out that's not the case, because all we have to do for this point right there is that for whatever reason, we can able to actually just decide able to swim in the actual underwater currents, which is a bit odd, considering for the fact that since we're on the ice world, of course, this means about the fact that the temperature of the water themselves is going to be ridiculously cold. So I could imagine about the fact that we can able to actually take damage from that particular frozen water, much like the forms of how it does it on other games for the time, like, you know, Super Mario 64, Super Mario 64 DS, and Super Mario Galaxy especially, and also Super Mario Odyssey as well, and you get the idea for that point. So, and I get the feeling for the fact that in order able to actually go for these little currents, basically though we do need to bring out the metal power-up. So because of that though, hopefully we should be able to actually try to get out of there though. So either way, we can able to activate the switch by doing so. And so much to the point, we can just jump straight into it, and we can now swim underwater as we expected. But yeah, I guess there's nothing else I can really say about this for the most part, although let's get back into the forms of that particular discussion about, you know, with the patch update for Mario Kart World. So, for instance though, they did manage to able to brought up quite a few issues here and there. Like, for instance though, they fixed an issue where items were no longer able to be used, and in addition to that, they also fixed an issue where sometimes controls were inoperable when selecting a character and trying to start free roam from the free roam map. And in addition to that, they also fixed an issue where sometimes the game shuts down when watching replay after a race. So, oh jeez, that could be kind of a bad thing in the, back then. And in addition to that, they also fixed an issue where sometimes the game shuts down after a race in online play. And they also fixed an issue where rate fluctuations were sometimes displayed incorrectly in Knockout Tour and online play. So that's something. And they also fixed an issue where it was easy for a communication error to occur when trying to join friends playing versus race or battle in online play. And in addition to that, they've also fixed an issue where you sometimes slip through the wall before the finish line of DK Spaceport racetrack. And finally, they fixed an issue where you sometimes couldn't return to correct position after falling off the course between Airship Fortress and Bowser's Castle while gliding. So yeah, I guess that's already been sorted. And meanwhile, in regards to the forms of Super Mario Party Jamboree, specifically the Switch 1 version as for right now, but obviously though, that game is currently now on version 2.0.0, which means, no, there's no DLC or something. So instead, they did manage to fix quite a lot of fixes here and there. Such as, for instance though, they fixed a bug where users are sometimes unable to get the defeat Imposter Bowser for the first time achievement when Bowser Kaboom Squad ends. So yeah, I guess it's that. And they fix a bug where the game can no longer progress when significant or specific operations were performed in Party Planner Trek. So yeah, I guess that's something. And they've also fixed a bug where CPUs could be controlled by unused but connected controller in certain minigames, and they fixed a bug in Junior's Gauntlet, or Juliet, I think is what it says anyway, where players were pushed out of bounds by Thwomp's attack. So, and they fixed a bug in Free Throw from Mario Party 4, where players would sometimes not get a point after scoring a goal, and yeah, I guess it's that. And they fixed a bug where the mushroom tickets item would disappear after one use under certain conditions. And finally, they fixed some other issues to make the gaming experience more pleasant. So yeah, I guess that's about it basically, in terms of the forms of the actual patch updates, in regards of both not only Mario Kart World, but in addition to Super Mario Party Jamboree Switch 1 version specifically. So anyway, the next thing I want to brought this up, and that's what appears to be for the fact that we actually got ourselves a confirmed release date for the upcoming remake of the Forms of the House of the Dead 2 remake, and is about to due out at some point on the 7th of August in 2025. So that's roughly going to be 2 months for now. So as a result, it's going to be roughly the exact same month as the Forms of not only, I just realized about something, that not only does it come out the exact same month, as in Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, but in addition to the Nintendo Switch 2 edition of Kirby and the Forgotten Land, plus with the Forms of Sky Crossed World. So, kind of interesting, all things considered, with all that multitude of releases during that specific month. So, oh, and speaking of which though, in regards to the forms of playing Pac-Man World 2 for the Game Boy Advance, if you couldn't tell, that did you guys know, it's been 12 years since Pac-Man and the Ghostly Adventures came out on the TV series, and I personally don't look back on it though, personally, because that particular show is just pretty weird, and it's also kind of feels a bit off too. Like, what in tarnation did I somehow got fingers, by the way, during the forms of that particular TV series, in addition to some video games based off from the TV series as well? Don't ask me why, which as a result, no wonder why I did somehow manage to bump into the faker of myself back in 2021, specifically by the end of that specific year, when I did manage to meet up with not only the great and powerful Trixie, but in addition to you know, Mighty and Ray, so you can get the idea what I was expecting to able to point things out. So, oh jeez, that was a very lucky landing right there, especially I've almost got, oh, okay. Good thing is actually water in there, so thankfully though we don't have to worry about, you know, do or die situations until specifically, towards the end of this stage, because as far as I'm aware though, thankfully though, there's an extra life right there, so now we're on to, technically, 10 lives so far, which yes, much like the Forms of how it does it on, well, not only the console version, well, I wouldn't classify for saying that, it's because, well, then again though, it's been 5 years ago since I actually have last played the PlayStation 2 version of Pac-Man World 2 specifically, so... Oh jeez, something tells me the end of the level is just right there, isn't it? Yep, there's the end of the level right there, which means we have to do a specific, you know, referral jumping skill, which means that if I do ended up missing that particular jump, I'm gonna waste lives fast, so... Ah, dang it! Okay, whatever. I somehow respawned there, so I might be okay from here, so... Alright, let's make this count! Alright, there we go. At least we grabbed the ledge, and there we go. Oh, wait. I will admit, though, right away, those levels aren't as long compared to the forms of how it does on the previous levels, for sure, but still, that the depth perception is going to be annoyingly apparent. So, anyways, let's move on now to the next boss, which is going to take place in the actual snowy environment, which conveniently enough is going to called, well, the ice boss, and for whatever reason, the background music remains the same as the forms of how it does on the first boss battle, so I don't think there's anything else we can able to say about this for the most part. I mean, sure enough though, we can able to actually face off against with Pinky, which as a result that she will start able to be shooting some snowballs. What you can able to actually try to do with this fight right there is that on the first phase of the battle is that you have to simply try to reflect or try to able to attack back with these little snowballs in mind, because that way it actually decides able to do, well, it doesn't do that much damage if you can tell from the gauge, but it will try to able to miraculously that you can able to actually try to make the machine down. And as a result though, despite the fact that I come across into a death earlier, which means that about the fact I have to like, you know what I'm saying, restart the entire fight again, and somehow we still able to come across into those very familiar springy stuff right there since on the first boss. So, but yeah, I could have wished if I was trying to able to describe about more stuff about the forms of Donkey Kong Bonanza at this point, but I haven't exactly paid attention to the forms of other information as far as I'm aware of. But I'm sure enough though is about the fact that that game is going to be super hyped more than anything. So, oh really? Is that how that goes? In terms of the first phase? So I'm pretty sure we now on to the second phase as far as I'm aware of. So I suppose on the second phase, I'm sure enough though Pinky can no longer try to shoot out snowballs at us. So she's going to able to try to activate the beam and, oh jeez, I totally forgot there are some spikes. And trying to butt bounce onto her for about twice. And keep doing that twice. And was that it? Was that seriously how this challenge can be? Gee, what a joke with this fight. Okay, so that's actually anticlimactic. Well, as long as that we don't die from those spikes, because that would be embarrassing if I do somehow got killed by the forms those spikes as soon as when I defeat the boss. So, but from now on though, we now on to the next world, which is going to take place in the volcano world, which I might as well do that until tomorrow, because for now, as you can definitely tell, I am still grinding for some extra lives, because no matter what though, look how much good the actual score count we're up to right now. We've almost had 100,000 points, well, at least in terms of the forms of those points grand total, because every time whenever you do manage to like, well, grab an extra life and stuff like that, you get yourselves an additional like, well, let's just say 1,000 points or something like that. So yeah, that's actually pretty swell. So either way, but of course, like I said before, there's absolutely no point for me to able to go for 400% completion, you know, especially because no matter what though, with all that depth perception issues, and in addition to that though, it's about the fact that this game can get rock-bottomly difficult the more you progress, especially noticeable during the forms within a volcano world, and especially noticeable in the final world, which is going to take place in a haunted environment, much like the forms of how it does on the console version, basically. So, yeah, essentially speaking, I might as well grab one more extra life, and that'll be good to go. In terms of the forms of the next episode coming up, or the next video, I should say. So, yeah, everything else would be come to expect, right? Well, truth be told, though, is about the fact I'm not exactly ready for, of what's to come. So with that being said, folks, is that we get endings up at this point right here. So join me next time for some more of Let's Play of Pac-Man World 2 for the Game Boy Advance. It's now we're going to be jumping into the volcano world, starting with Into the Volcano, conveniently enough. So, wish me luck, I suppose. So I'll see you guys until tomorrow. Later, fellas.